Nimrod. He created the practice of idolatry and astrology and introduced them to the world. He built the Tower of Babel to rebel against the Lord. He married Queen Semiramis and they had a son named Tammuz. All the ancient gods are actually just Nimrod and his family, falsely deified by misguided pagans. These are some of the popular legends of Nimrod, and they all have one thing in common. Not a single one of them is biblical. They're also ironic, since what little the Bible does actually say about Nimrod seems to be positive. The totality of the Bible's information about Nimrod is only a few verses.
And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar.
Some believe verses 11 and 12 are about Nimrod as well. If the biblical author had envisioned Nimrod as having done all these things later attributed to him, one would expect for it to have been mentioned in the Bible itself. But according to the Bible, Nimrod was a man of great prowess and significant enough to inspire a proverb. Between this and the lack of information about him, he also inspired many later legends, both negative and positive. Probably the most popular legend of Nimrod is that he built the Tower of Babel. The story of the Tower of Babel is told in the 11th chapter of the book of Genesis in the Bible. After Jehovah sent the great flood of Noah, the new generation of people decided to build a great city with a tower tall enough to reach the heavens and make a name for themselves so that they wouldn't get scattered across the earth. Jehovah saw them building the city and was alarmed at how their unity made anything possible for them. Jehovah and his companions then decided to come down and divide the people by changing their language so they could no longer communicate with each other. Then he scattered them across the earth. But Nimrod is never associated with the Tower of Babel in the story. That comes from non-biblical accounts. There are also accounts that say Nimrod wasn't involved with the tower. Some even say that Nimrod warred against the builders of the tower for Jehovah, which is what inspired the proverb the Bible mentions, to be even as Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. But while the Bible seems to speak of Nimrod positively, over many centuries Nimrod was made into a more negative and at times even demonic figure. Legends claim that he taught the world idolatry, that he built the Tower of Babel to fight against Jehovah, and other things. He became known as Nimrod the Wicked. Eventually, every part of his biblical description was reconstrued as bad. Nimrod's name was taken to mean rebel, and though the Bible doesn't say who, if anyone, he supposedly rebelled against, it was assumed to be Jehovah. Before the Lord was sometimes rendered as against the Lord. Hunter was also given a negative connotation, as it was later interpreted to mean that he hunted and killed humans, or even that it was a metaphor meaning that he was a hunter of people's minds, getting them to turn against Jehovah. Some religious authorities spoke out against these methods to vilify Nimrod, as they felt it was wrong to put traditions about Nimrod over what the Bible actually says. But the idea of Nimrod as evil remained popular anyway. There may have been several reasons why Nimrod was vilified. Aside from speculation about his name, Nimrod was a son of Cush, so Nimrod was traditionally considered an Ethiopian. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham. Cush was Ham's son. This meant Nimrod was from the line of Ham, which was at times seen as at odds with the line of Shem, the line of the Israelites, Jehovah's chosen people. It became a recurrent legend that Nimrod tried to kill the patriarch of the Israelites, Abraham, by throwing Abraham into a furnace. Abraham was saved from the fire by Jehovah. This legend of Nimrod and Abraham is even shared in Islamic tradition. Nimrod also may have been one of the giants spoken of in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis.
There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown.
The Bible calls Nimrod Gibor, which is usually translated as mighty. While this word doesn't necessarily suggest anything superhuman, sometimes it does. It's the same word used in Genesis 6:4 for the semi-divine children of the gods and human women. It's also used of King David's apparently superhuman warriors who could single-handedly kill hundreds of men in battle at one time. While in Genesis these mighty ones are called men of renown, In later traditions, the gods in Genesis 6:4 were re-envisioned as sinful fallen angels. Their children were also seen as evil, destructive menaces. Philo, the Jewish philosopher, describes Nimrod as a dark-skinned giant who, as a hunter, lived amongst beasts and was the greatest of all sinners. Conceptions of Nimrod have only expanded over time. Today, it's a common idea in Christian circles that non-Christian gods are really just Nimrod and his family. These claims were popularized by Alexander Hislop in his book from the 1800s titled The Two Babylons. Hislop arrives at this conclusion through a series of arbitrary, convoluted, and often dumbfounding connections. The Bible makes no mention of Nimrod's wife or child, but Hislop assigns them himself by identifying Nimrod as other people. According to Greek legend, Assyria was founded by a king named Ninus, who was the first conqueror. Therefore, Hislop says the mythological Ninus is Nimrod. Ninus had a wife, Queen Semiramis. Semiramis, therefore, was Nimrod's wife. Hislop also asserts that Nimrod and Semiramis had a son and that this son was the god Tammuz, mentioned in Ezekiel 8:14 of the Bible. This family, according to Hislop, became the gods of pagan belief. A few examples of how he arrives at this idea. Semiramis is Cybele. The goddess Cybele was said to be the first to build towers and is depicted with towers on her crown. Legend says that Semiramis built great walls in Babylon. Since Semiramis is the first queen of Babylon and she built walls, and Cybele was the first to build towers, Hislop says Cybele must be Semiramis. Semiramis is Aphrodite. Aphrodite was often identified with the Phoenician goddess Astarte. Hislop claims that the name Astarte means the woman that made towers or encompassing walls, and that this means she's Semiramis, which means Semiramis is Aphrodite. Nimrod is the god of fortifications in Daniel 11:38. Hislop claims that Semiramis is credited with building the walls of Babylon because, as Ninus' wife, people just passed his attributes onto her because she was the more beloved figure. Therefore, her being attributed with building the walls must mean that Nimrod built them, which makes Nimrod the god of fortifications. Nimrod is Osiris. Hislop says Nimrod and Osiris have similar features which reveal they are the same person. Osiris was black, Nimrod was black. According to Hislop, Nimrod was the god of fortifications, and Osiris was likewise celebrated as the strong chief of the buildings. Hislop claims Nimrod's name means subduer of the leopard. Osiris and his priests sometimes wore leopard skins, which Hislop claims is to identify Osiris' true origin as Nimrod. Nimrod is Kronos. Hislop cites that Theophilus of Antioch says Kronos was known in the East as Bel. Eusebius gives a legend that the first king of Assyria was named Belus. Since Ninus was the first king of Assyria, Hislop claims this means Belus, who is Kronos, must be Ninus, who is Nimrod. Hislop also claims Kronos means horned one, and that horns symbolized might. Therefore, Kronos is synonymous with Nimrod's description as Gibor, mighty one, further confirming that Kronos is Nimrod. Hislop further claims that Semiramis created the mysteries to glorify Nimrod. The mysteries were ancient religious centers where initiates sought out special knowledge. The highest teachings and rituals were kept in great secret, and it was said that the penalty may even be death for revealing them. But from what can be gathered, it appears that ultimately the initiate undergoes rites that grant him illumination, that is, personal contact with the gods themselves. According to Hislop, Noah's son Shem killed Nimrod to stop his influence and had Nimrod's body dismembered to make an example of him to his followers. Out of fear, it supposedly made Semiramis create the mysteries as a way to take the worship of Nimrod underground and in secret. Hislop says Semiramis told the people that Nimrod had miraculously come back as their son, who Hislop claims was Tammuz. Hislop says this claim made people think that Nimrod, Tammuz, and Semiramis were divine, and from then on they were worshipped as the gods of different cultures. But despite all the elaborate and conflicting ideas surrounding Nimrod, there is no known record of Nimrod at these times. The Babylonians and previous civilizations of the area left lists of their kings and gods, and neither Nimrod or Semiramis appear on any of them. and though the Bible says Nimrod was famed enough to be a proverb, Nimrod as a person seems unknown outside of the Bible. Because of this, there's been speculation that Nimrod may be some other known figure under a different name. Nimrod is sometimes believed to be, or be based on, the Mesopotamian king Gilgamesh. According to legend, Gilgamesh was likewise one of the first kings after the Great Flood. Gilgamesh was also a demigod giant, often depicted wrestling lions. He was variously said to have ruled the same lands the Bible attributes to Nimrod. Others think Nimrod may be the Mesopotamian god Ninurta under a different name. Ninurta was a warrior and hunter god, and some believe Nimrod's cities listed in Genesis correspond to Ninurta's major centers of worship. But unless something is found about Nimrod that's more detailed and older than his brief mentions in the Bible, we may never really know the story behind those verses. Whether interpreted as a mighty hero or a demonic villain, Nimrod remains a mystery.